Hey, welcome back. It's Melvin. It's day 104. Are we on our way to a full recovery? Let's find out. So the leaves look very verdant and dark green. The newer ones are lighter, and we have all these old leaves that are dying. They've been sunburned, so I expect them to fall off eventually and just shrivel away over time, although I might interfere and just prune them away to see if that stimulates any new growth. It probably won't because there's not much left to cut away. I think pruning really works on healthy leaves. We have some lesions on some of these existing older leaves and some spots on the new ones. Maybe it's getting too much sun. It's day 108. It's another beautiful day in my neighborhood. Love the coloration of these apartment buildings. And let's check on the status again. So this is in the morning. The sun hasn't hit the balcony yet. Joshua tree is doing pretty good. If you look at this, it's actually healthier. It's very verdant looking. At least the older leaves are. One of them has a curl on the end. It just came out that way. So new leaves are constantly growing, and that's a great sign. The old leaves, as I mentioned earlier, are just going to wither away. And although these leaves get very little direct sunlight per day, I think they've been burned and scorched by the heat too. So they're basically goners. They're just going through a self-destruct program, essentially. And I assume the plant is recycling all those nutrients. So aside from that and being unsightly for a while, things are okay. So it's day 111. And I'm seeing how much direct sunlight my avocado seedling gets. I'm just doing this and being lazy, just looking through my sliding door. So yeah, it gets some sun. Now it's 3 p.m. It's still in direct sun, although it's not much. I mean, not all the leaves are directly exposed. So it's impossible to get a spot on the balcony where it won't get any direct sunlight at all. And there was a while, I think, where I tried to have this half under the table. That didn't really work. And what I mean by that is the plant just wasn't getting enough sun, hence the leaves were very verdant dark green. And there was just very little growth in my estimation. So what I'm doing now is it's day 112. I'm dissolving some low-dose aspirin pills that are crushed with these pliers in distilled water, a liter per jug. These are 1.5 liter jugs. Normally use them for hiking. I'm going to wash them out later and fill them with more water. So the purpose here is I'm leaving for vacation, and I'm going to be gone for like 10 days, starting the day after this, day 113, and I want to get a good hydration of the soil. I think a viewer of my series mentioned that it could be the leaf drooping could be due to, or the curling of the leaves, certain leaves, could be due to an oversalting of the soil. So I'm going to try to combat that by flushing out the soil with lots and lots of distilled water. The aspirin does add a little bit of salt there, but it's a very tiny amount compared to what's probably in this pot and what's causing all this leaf curling. So that comes from just too much macronutrient fertilizer, the Miracle Grow, and several crushed vitamin pills worth of calcium carbonate, etc. So that just mineralizes the soil. Not necessarily salts it, but it just adds to the amount of solutes in there. So in extreme cases, if there's way too much salt in soil or potting mix, then the plant is literally dying of thirst, even though its feet are soaking wet, so to speak, because it can't absorb water against a high salt gradient where the soil is saltier than the solutes inside the plant itself. So inside plant and animal cells you have lots of salts and solutes as well, but in extreme cases, especially for plants that don't grow in salt marshes or mangroves, etc., or in very salty environments such as next to salt flats, then the plants will have all their water sucked out of their roots by the salt and die. So they literally can't drink from wet soil. So I'm going to wash off all these leaves very thoroughly. There should be some aspirin residue, but I think that's minor. And on this day you can really see the leaf curl just because of the weight the water adds. But even if the leaves were dry, it's still a little droopier than I'd like. So this is going to take a while. It's going to take a lot of flushing, and of course I can't just splash the whole thing violently on the surface of the soil. When it's all loose like that, the potting mix, it'll just splash around, and that's really annoying to see everything shift, and then you've got this giant crater in certain spots. But luckily I have all these dead leaves on the soil, all 6 of them or 7 of them, and they're good because they prevent evaporation, provide cover, and acidify the soil as they rot. So I can water on them by pouring my watering can directly onto the dead leaves, and that won't cause any soil shifting. So now we have all these nutrients flushing out. So I think that's only been 1 liter's worth of distilled water with aspirin in it. It's a very non-salty solution essentially. So that'll wash out all the Miracle-Gro and excess calcium carbonate, or most of it. You would take a truly staggering amount of distilled water to wash everything out, but that's not actually my goal. I do want a lot of those macronutrients and micronutrients to stay in there so the plant can grow at a healthy pace. So the water coming out looks pretty clean. Before, I've shown footage in previous episodes where there were dead bugs floating around in there and particles of potting mix, dirt. It's pretty gross. So this is good cleaning. It may have gotten rid of a lot of those fungus gnat corpses. So this is how I'm going to orient the pot prior to my departure for vacation. So we're going to have one last look at my baby before I go away. Hydration is definitely not going to be an issue. It might take 2 weeks or even 3 for the plant to use up that much water, assuming things go right. These are pretty big leaves, so should be a decent amount of transpiration pull compared to, say, the Joshua tree. So I'm looking forward to coming back to giant leaves that are erect and not droopy. Granted, these are wet right now. So it's day 125. It's after the vacation. I do have huge leaves that aren't drooping. You probably can't get a proper sense of the scale, so I will measure these. They're not dark green, and I mean there is a tiny bit of droop, but if the leaves were already droopy and curly, I don't think that's going to go away even after you rectify the situation 100%. So this leaf has some brown spots on it. I have no idea what those are. But look how big this is. It's my new favorite leaf. It's longer than my hand, and so are some of the other leaves as well. These aren't as dark green as that one. The one that is more dark green, paradoxically, has more exposure to the afternoon sun. I think the sun has shifted from the course of July through August. So let's measure this and see how big it is. It's, by my estimation, 67 millimeters wide, and the ruler doesn't even extend that long. So it's 15 centimeters, I'd say 17 centimeters. That's pretty big. So you can tell how hydrated the soil is by lifting the pot. It's still heavy, which means there's a lot of water in there, hence the dark coloration of the soil, even on the surface. I thought I had this plant at the perfect angle to get all that reflective light in the afternoon, but it's now August instead of July, and the sun has shifted its trajectory relative to my balcony. So only the leaves on the right are getting this reflective afternoon light, and they look healthier. Well, I don't know. I guess there are 3 leaves that look great and 2 that are, great looking but less green, and 1 that's got all the spots like a leopard. So here's a good demo. So the trajectory of the sun has shifted. The reflective light is coming more to the right of the balcony, so I'm shifting this pot out, and it's further out, further to the right, and hopefully that'll get a lot more sun. I might even just move it very close to the sliding door. That's where I used to have some of my plants, and that might be an optimal spot. There was a while there where I was worried that the shoot apical meristem died, but it looks like it's healthy and growing again. So I look forward to getting a lot more new leaves.